Well, with 5 days before the election, nobody better to talk about the Donald Trump campaign than the woman who's actually running it. Kellyanne Conway joins us live.
Thank you.
Good morning to you.
Good morning.
How about these Brett Baier details?
Amazing.
Last night, he's got two sources inside the FBI. If you're just joining us, here are the highlights. The investigation's been going for over a year, handled by the White Collar Crime Division. Those two laptops.
Clinton Foundation.
Into the Clinton Foundation.
We have to keep our FBI investigations at Hillary Street.
Right. The two laptops from the aides, they are not destroyed. They're now going through it. Apparently, an indictment is possible into the Clinton Foundation pay-for-play scam.
And an avalanche of new information every day.
And a 99% chance that apparently her email server was hacked by at least 5 foreign governments. Where do you want to start?
Well, where do we start? I just don't want Americans to feel that, I don't know how this affects me. Why should I care? You should care very much, because you've already gotten a clear view into what Hillary Clinton's presidency would look like, her administration. She's simply unfit and unqualified to be president. We already know what's happened at the State Department, using it as a concierge for foreign donations, and then turning around and allowing access by individuals who don't really have official State Department business but want to give money to the Clinton Foundation. Why should people care about that? Because the Clinton Foundation then turned around and allowed Bill Clinton to make, what, $66 million we read, get contributions like $28 million from Morocco. Uranium One, I think, is becoming a household term now, Steve, in terms of people understanding that
Russia has our access.
Russia has our access. And so this is somebody who has already proven how she would handle classified information, confidential information, and frankly how she handles lying about lying. That's the difficulty here. And look, I think you said 99% chance that 5 different foreign nations hacked. I think there's a 100% chance that all this Scandalavra is catching up with her in the polls. I mean, you see we're really Scandalavra. You see that we're really catching her in these blue states like Colorado, tied today.
Tied at 39.
Tied at 39, according to, and this is a woman who I always say, Brian, can't get past 46%. It turns out in some of these states she can't get past 42%. In states that President Obama carried with well over 50% of the vote. That's really the key here.
Totally a different election this week than just last week after they reopened this investigation on Friday. What does this all mean for Donald Trump, because he only has 5 more days left?
What it means for the voters, Ainsley, is that they're going to look at the closing arguments of these two candidates. And Hillary Clinton has gone lower and lower and lower. She's gone full-on negative, 100%. Even Joe Biden, President Obama, they're out there attacking Donald Trump. Her closing argument is a long way away from the man from hope, the audacity of hope. It's the audacity of Hillary now. And it's basically all they know, because they have had a structure in place in the 8 years since she lost the presidency the first time of how would we run focus groups, polling, messaging, how do we hide this information, how do we reach this group, and they just are simply unprepared for the news of the day. And so I think they're flailing. The Democratic messaging is all over the place, and somehow somebody thinks it's a good idea to go after Director Comey. It's a terrible idea for her. It's a great idea for us, but you see Donald Trump on message on the stump talking about his love for the country, his love for its people, and folks are starting to realize the difference between these two candidates are many. She went from dead broke to making $250 million, has never taken a company public, didn't hit the Powerball, didn't sell anything, hasn't.
Where'd that money come from?
Where'd that money come from? They're selling access and favors. But in Donald Trump's case, he's a successful businessman. He's an inspirational story to entrepreneurs. He builds things, he fixes things, he solves problems. The other difference between them is who is the consummate Washington insider that cannot claim and mantle to the change that 3/4 of Americans tell the Fox News pollsters they want to make.
When you look at the media, he's definitely the underdog. I mean, look at CNN giving questions in advance to the Democrats. And Donald Trump said if that had happened, if Reince Priebus had given, if Reince Priebus had done that to me, I would have gotten the electric chair.
Well, so I hope he would have fired me if I had done that. Certainly, I certainly would have resigned. But this is how Hillary Clinton has spent her career. It's always Hillary first, cutting corners, being propped up. They say lock her up. I always say prop her up. She's got everybody from the president to the first lady to the vice president to her husband, who also happens to be a former president, all out there campaigning for her and propping her up. And she's just so negative. This is not the Democratic Party I grew up in, where it's aspirational, optimistic, forward-looking. It's all cesspool, personal, political destruction by her. And I think it's going to backfire.
I want to talk about strategy if we could. Florida and Ohio, you're doing much better there than Mitt Romney was doing and John McCain was doing. So it's more likely that you get them in a column. But if you don't turn a red state blue, or a couple of them, you're not going to win. Close, but you're not going to win. Colorado looks like it's in play, tied at 39. Not many people thought that. Where else should we keep an eye on? The last Wisconsin poll, you said, okay, look at Marquette. Marquette poll, which many people respect, has you trailing by 6. So maybe it's not Wisconsin. Where do we look?
Well, look to see where we're deploying our two major assets, Governor Pence and Mr. Trump. And they have been in Wisconsin. They'll be back there. Governor Pence will be in Michigan.
You're not giving
today.
up on Wisconsin.
Nope. And Michigan. Also Colorado, as you mentioned. Also take a look at Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is known as fool's gold for Republican candidates, but this is a different candidate. His message of trade and illegal immigration and job creation and energy investment in Pennsylvania is huge.
But he hasn't been close there, Kellyanne.
Well, the latest polls have him 3 to 4 points there, and internally we see the same thing. So there's like 4 different polls out now, Susquehanna and a few others, that have him 3 or 4 points. And again, Ryan, what I'm always looking at, I've talked about it on your set before, I always look at 2 things, which is, 1, Hillary Clinton just can't bust through that 45, 46% anywhere, and she's nowhere near where President Obama was with 5 days to go in these blue states. Number 2, the undercover Trump voter, it's not that they're embarrassed to say, it's that they've already decided, I want change. But some of them have not been for Donald Trump. They've been against. They've already decided, I don't want to vote for Hillary Clinton for any number of reasons. Now he's making the case of why they should feel comfortable to actually vote for an outsider.
A couple of Republicans are on board. It looks like he's changed his mind, a very powerful talk show host. And Ted Cruz is going to be on the stump from originally, obviously, no, to I'm with Mike Pence and, of course, with Donald Trump. What else have you heard? Can you give us any other names of Republicans that have come on board?
Yes, and you see a number of these congressmen. Frankly, I get a lot of calls from Senate candidate staff because you look at Donald Trump and Mike Pence's margins in states where you have competitive governor's races and Senate races like New Hampshire, North Carolina, Missouri, and Indiana. And Trump is actually running even with or actually ahead, particularly the gubernatorial candidates. So that in Indiana, that's exciting to those folks. We also we do hear from people who never consider themselves necessarily never Trumpers, but we're trying to figure out how to get there. And they like the fact that Donald Trump looks like a winner, and they realize they don't want the Supreme Court recast in Hillary Clinton's likeness. And they see that he is putting forth issues. I think his Gettysburg, the plan he laid out at Gettysburg for the first 100 days was a big defining point for many of those reluctant Republicans, Brian, because they say, this is something I can get behind. I personally receive calls from members of Congress and candidates who say, I can actually drop bills. I can put legislation forward that supports that 100-day plan.
I heard John Kasich is having second thoughts. He's going to try to recast his vote. Did you hear that?
That would be fine, but we're going to win Ohio without his help.
There you go. Let me ask you this. You know, Donald Trump has only been a politician for about 1.5 years. There's been a learning curve, but right now, and we saw it yesterday, back on message, how would you characterize how he has made this evolution into, right now, they're dead even, where he is versus a career politician who's been in the business for 35 years, and here this guy who's brand new at it is tied with her.
He's tied with her because he's not a politician, and he has demonstrated and illustrated exactly what that means. So it means that you can still talk about your success outside of politics. He's a builder, he's a fixer, he solves problems. He's a real inspiration for lots of Americans. And he's employed tens of thousands of people, including women, and elevated them to the highest levels. And I think when people look at that, what have people said to pollsters for decades? I'd like somebody outside of politics to run for politics. I'd like somebody who doesn't owe anybody anything in Washington, D.C., is not part of the insider's game. And they never really get their chance at the presidential level. If you look at the congressional level, they do tend to vote for folks who it's their first run. They say, I can't stand on the sidelines anymore. I actually have to put myself out there. It's never really happened at the presidential level.
And he's opening the door for other people to do this down the road, as well as Hillary Clinton. It's got just unprecedented.
Exactly.
It's been
but I think it's a huge contrast, a real choice election, if you will, this time. Certainly in substance, also in style, but also in background. So this is people's chance. I mean, the one polling statistic we've looked at internally all along that I think has been missed in so much of the public polling until recently is the dynamism with which you look at anywhere from 15% to 28% in these swing states. The number of people who say, I don't want to continue with the same policies we've had, but they weren't yet voting for Donald Trump. They're unfavorable towards Hillary. They want to break with the past policies, but they weren't yet there. And I think the excuse to vote against Hillary has now married up with the reason to vote for Donald Trump, and you're seeing that reflected in the polls. We're going to win. I hope you'll be there election night.
Thank you so much.
Victory.
All right.
Thank you
very much.
Thanks for having me.